Hi, and welcome to the Skincarma Pod. I'm Carmine, the creator and voice of the Skincarma blog. With more than 25 years in beauty as a brand builder, copywriter, and skincare junkie, I'm putting my product wisdom and expertise to work demystifying skincare. We spend a lot of time talking about what skincare products do, the ingredients, the science, the clinical data behind the claims. But long before we ever learn what a product does, we've already decided how we feel about it. A photograph, a campaign, a bottle on a shelf, a face in a magazine, an image that somehow feels aspirational, inevitable, or simply impossible to ignore. In other words, desire. In this episode of the Skin Karma Pod, I'm joined by photographer, director, and agency founder Anderson for a fascinating conversation about the mechanics of desire, how luxury brands create it, how beauty brands sustain it, and why the algorithm may have changed where desire lives, but not how it works. From his early days apprenticing under Italian photographers in East London to helping launch some of beauty's most recognizable brands, Anderson offers an uncommon glimpse inside the worlds of image making, branding, and modern beauty culture. Because sometimes the most interesting question isn't what we're buying, it's why we wanted it in the first place. Let's get to it. Let's welcome Anderson to the pod. Anderson, hello.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm great. It's so good to finally have you here. I know we've been talking about this for a while now, but a certain somebody had to move across the country and get settled.
I mean, hey, this is a creative way, right? Just flexible
Yeah.
until it works out.
Yeah, and I know you like both cities, LA and New York. So,
I know I've been in New York almost, I want to say 10 years now. I
mm.
moved here in 2018, and the winters are finally starting to grind on me. So I'm actively looking for more opportunities in the LA metro area to
Yeah,
get me get me over there,
the
especially in the
last two winters.
especially this one. You were here, right?
Yeah,
It
I
was
was. I
dreadful to
was.
say the
It
least.
reminded me, it took me back to that bus stop at 10 years old in Connecticut at when it was 0 degrees, and I'm shivering in my puffy coat, waiting for the fucking bus. And of course, the bus is taking too long because it's icy and snowy, and the bus is going like 30 miles an hour. And it was in that moment that I decided the second I could get out of my parents' house, I was moving to California. And
Ah,
I had never been. Like that was the moment that the dream to move to California was set in motion. And I think you know that I actually did make that happen right after college at 22. And I was here for 15 years and then moved back to New York for work. So, like, you get that. Like, you got to go where the creative is, right? And where you're nourished.
I
So,
mean, look, I've been out all around the world. I left my place or my parents' place, I suppose, similar to you, as soon as I was able.
yeah.
I was in college for a brief stint. I actually studied classical music. I was a double bassist, if you can imagine that.
What?
Yeah, I
Wow.
know. Mic drop.
Wow. Yeah.
No, I was really good at it. I got a scholarship, but the passion for it, I just don't think was there, especially just in the a grand career scheme of things. There's not much you can do with that. You can either
Yeah.
be a teacher or I guess work in some sort of orchestra,
Mhm.
uh, which is difficult, and you I think really have to have the passion for any sort of creative thing you're doing. So I moved on to a different creative hobby, or which is now a career. So
Yeah.
photography. During my entire college years, I was kind of peddling those services on the side. I really made a whole community. I went to school in Nebraska, so
No, I was gonna ask you, when you left your parents' house, where was that house?
the house was in Missouri. Uh,
Okay.
the college is in Nebraska,
Oh my
but
god.
I think then Instagram was just sort of like becoming a thing, and I had
Mm.
somehow gotten like 1,500 followers, which I know is nothing. But for that community, like everyone knew me there. I actually partnered with like local magazines. I had merch, which
You had merch?
I had merch. Um,
Wow.
yeah. So I was a little creative bombshell, I suppose, from the beginning, and everything I've done since then, I just think is an evolution of that, moving to different markets. I spent a good bit of time in Europe in those like underground art scenes, and eventually I landed in New York, which has a super rich creative scene itself, of course.
Yeah. You know what? I wanted you to talk about that landing in East London's underground art scene, like, and apprenticing under two Italian photographers. Like, as an Italian, I totally gravitate to that. I'm sure they had really cool names like Luigi or Valentino, or coming from a Carmine. That experience seems to have shaped not only your aesthetic but the way you think about beauty itself. Yeah, like,
Sure. Well,
take me back to that. Take us back to that period.
first of all, their names, there was a Simone and an Antonio.
Okay,
Uh,
okay, okay.
Simone, I thought was embarrassingly at first called Simone, because I
Mm.
booked his Airbnb and it just said I'd never been out of the country. I was just there traveling, and I booked an Airbnb with literally the last of my money, my hard-earned money from a Google contract, which I had gotten in college, running my little photo business. I naively thought, traveling to the UK would not, suck my bank account. Anyhow, so I booked
Yeah.
that Airbnb with the last of my funds, kind of like on a whim, really. I, showed up, quickly learned that Simone, the Frenchman, was actually Simone, the Italian
Mm.
guy. We started chatting. This was back when Airbnb was, quite a cool, I think, platform to meet people. Now it's kind of been commoditized in a way that I think all the life's been sucked out of it. But that's a whole other side tangent. Anyhow, we started talking. We figured out by chance that we were both photographers, and I learned that he ran a studio kind of down the road, and the rest is kind of history. The studio, it's funny, there was another American guy there, a dancer. So we had like our little Italian American crew running around.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And can we talk about the name? When did you drop Shane from your name?
Oh gosh, that was quite a bit later. So let me just, I guess, break down a quick timeline. So I was in
Yeah.
East London for a while. I really absorbed a lot there, just in terms. This is one of my, I think, advantages too. Once I finally made it to New York, was kind of, I feel like most creatives that end up in the city, young creatives at least, kind of come from where I did, the middle of the country where there's not much going on. They kind of, end up in New York as the place to express themselves and be authentic. As I eventually did, but I by the time I ended up here, I had lived, sort of 5 different lives between then.
Right.
So I, swept up that art scene. The studio where these photographers had a place was in East London, area called Hackneywick and Fish Island, which, just a quick geography lesson, it's completely kind of segmented from the rest of London by these 3 canals. I think it's 3, I'm not sure, and like a huge highway.
Mm.
So it's really quite literally secluded from, the rest of society. And all of the artists lived in these old abandoned warehouses. There were probably, I'd say, 10 artists or so in a warehouse. Each got kind of a different section, and the main area was kind of where everyone did their practice. And then on the weekends, it would turn into these huge like raves, which still beat any party I've been to in New York, I have to say. Long story short, I ended up in Italy for a little bit after that, just due to my connection with that culture. I was really broke there and heartbroken, and my family life growing up wasn't, I would say, the 100% best. So it really kind of healed me in like a personal way, but also an artistic way, to kind of be broken, poor, and sad and starving in a city that's just so beautiful to look at, and culture that's so beautiful, and people with such a family oriented culture. So that, I think, really shaped, especially at 18, 19, how I view the world and art and personal connections. Anyhow, after that, ended up in New York. And then, to get back to your question, the name Anderson sort of popped up in LA, actually, at the
Mm.
Chateau. Uh,
The
and if you
Chateau
know
Marmont.
and if you know anything about the
Wow.
Chateau, you just know how iconic that is.
Yeah.
So it was actually during the COVID season, I suppose, those like 2 years. I got invited by someone in the industry to come for a long weekend at the Chateau, and there was a series of people. I would say maybe 10, 15 people who had been living there the whole time during the pandemic, all, completely different walks of life, creative, eccentric. I mean, I could write a whole film about what went on there. But one afternoon by the pool, someone in the industry who's very well respected planted this little seed in my head, and they wouldn't really let up about it. And I really trust their judgment. And, as a creative, you can probably relate, this stuff doesn't happen in a boardroom. It happens casually, socially, and especially in the place like the chateau, it kind of develops a life of its own. So I've been
Yeah.
rocking it ever since then.
I love that. I changed my name. I don't want to break too much news here on the podcast, but I changed the pronunciation of my name at 17 when I left my parents to go to college. Like,
Wow.
it was not pronounced Carmine when I was growing up, and I hated the way it was pronounced. I'm not even going to say it because it makes me sick. But I completely get that. And when I realized that you had done the same, I thought that was super cool. Like, it takes a lot. Like, not a lot of people do that.
Yeah, and I think as an artist, especially as you
Yeah.
grow and change, there's a lot of power, I think, in kind of having that uh, alter ego. I mean, just look at Lady Gaga, I think, is the example a lot of people listening to this could easily relate to.
Yeah.
The stage performers, such a deep creative artist persona, and then the person behind it is such a sweetie, but both, not one is more genuine than the other. I think it's a
Yeah.
really cool thing as an artist to be able to explore those types of things.
Yeah, that's cool. One of the most interesting lines in your agency manifesto is that luxury understood desire long before the internet understood engagement. I found that idea really provocative. And, most marketers today are obsessed with clicks, impressions, conversion. When you talk about desire, what do you mean?
Yeah, so I think let's first kind of just set the stage in terms of like kind of where we are in the media landscape. So
Mm,
I think it's important to understand like the profound impact social media and the internet have had. And I know obviously that's kind of a statement everyone understands, right? But when we look back at the history of technology, what it really does is it accelerates ideas. Like, I think the easy way to think about it, like we're both from, smaller communities. Uh, when we're in these spaces, the kind of hive mindset is very much that. And as you move into more creative spaces, you have proximity to these ideas and everything. Airplanes shorten the distance between places, so ideas can travel faster. Well, with the internet and social media, that becomes lightning speed, and there's such kind of a feedback loop, which allows for enormous opportunity for brands,
yeah.
but it also opens the stage for a lot of sameness, which especially now with AI, that's a whole other conversation. But I think we're seeing a little bit of a feedback back loop, and I think the modern consumer is kind of getting, I don't know, over it, just to put it
Mm,
in simple terms. So where luxury comes in, I've been in these rooms since I was 19, 20. Really, when I moved to New York, I was producing global celebrity campaigns. That's a whole other story as well, which we can get into. But um, being in these rooms, especially at a young age, in rooms that I didn't inherit access to, really allowed me to see how these systems sort of operate, right? So when we talk about luxury understanding desire, I think it's important to understand what luxury brands are selling, because at the end of the day, they're not really selling a bag or a lipstick. They're selling access into a lifestyle. And I
yeah.
don't think that this is necessarily the case with most brands who are trying to scale on social. What happens oftentimes is I think many marketers today are still operating from this distribution ideals of the 90s and 2000s, where publishing, uh, TV networks, media really had the concentrated power, right, of distribution of who is an icon. So we have to ask these days, what defines that, right? So when we think about that in social media, these channels have really democratized access.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you sell a lifestyle on these platforms? And I think that's something that's really interesting to kind of delve into. And of course, you don't have to be selling luxury goods to understand and implement this. It's how can different brands from different sectors build a world around their product and not function from this idea of we need more, more, more. And then usually on a set, like a professional set, um, hundreds of thousands of dollars are being invested in maybe 10, maybe 20 images, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes what I see is, behind the scenes shooter is brought in for, I don't know, a few $1,000s and are expected to fill this content gap. But that's what I mean when I say um, marketers should look at it from the other way up. Whereas the social media being the place where the average consumer is engaging with the brand first and most often. So to treat this as kind of like we'll just throw some content in there or dump it on the hands of, an overworked in-house team to fill this gap, I think is doing a complete disservice to what world you can really build on social and how that can grow into your campaign assets, which do still hold tremendous value, but letting them feel deserved as opposed to performative.
Yeah. What do you think luxury brands understand about human behavior that most modern brands today have forgotten or just don't know?
Well, again, I think it goes back to that idea of selling a lifestyle, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think, again, in the current climate,
The social
people,
media climate.
yeah, but also even honestly, the political, economic,
Oh.
this idea of like AI,
Mm.
taking over. People want real, authentic content. And again, when luxury is selling a lifestyle, they're allowing you to become in this world. And I think that's why also we're seeing a big resurgence of IRL experiences, in-person events, dinners, brand activations that are really hyper stylized. And this not only, invites the viewer in, but perhaps gives the viewer a chance to be part of the brand, to create content themselves. And a good example of this, I recently did an activation with MAC Cosmetics as part of their
Mm-hmm.
Viva Glam initiative, which, if anyone doesn't know out there, 100% of the proceeds of that go to HIV/AIDS programs, which is amazing. They've been doing that since, I think, '94, which is another great
Yeah, that
example of
brand, that campaign is iconic. That initiative is iconic.
Yeah. And I think it's a really good reminder that, cultural change in beauty really does find its roots in counterculture, as does much of
Mm.
the idea of a modern persona. I mean, even those ideas can go back to like the Club Kids, Studio 54, all these people who really understood what uh, iconography is, how to put it on a person, and how to turn that into a brand, which, again, that's pretty much what an influencer or creator is these days, just, a couple decades later with social media at your disposal.
Yeah,
Um, Anyhow, back to the campaign moment. So I'm not sure. Are you familiar with Alexis Stone by any chance?
I'm not.
Okay, so they are like a prosthetic artist who kind of does recreations of famous personas. So I don't know if you saw the kind of Jim Carrey controversy recently in the past year, where people were wondering if it was actually Jim Carrey on the red carpet or if it
Mm.
was prosthetics. Well, Alexis was behind that.
Ah,
They've
okay.
also done Miranda Priestley, all sorts of iconic individuals, and makeup artistry. Anyhow, so with MAC Cosmetics, Alexis partnered to do a Joan Rivers Resurrection fashion
Oh
police.
my
Uh,
God.
Fantastic. And it was a stunt, a Viva Glam stunt in New York at their Soho store. And what's interesting about this is kind of the convergence of, again, these IRL experiences, but also turning them into campaign moments. So part of this experience, Joan Rivers gets out of a limo at the Mac store and is flooded by a sea of paparazzi.
Mm-hmm.
I I was one of these paparazzi. And the cool thing about this is, yes, it was a stunt, but the paparazzi were actually, credible photographers who were actually also capturing content for the campaign. So it's almost as if the event were a campaign. And of course, there's also the public aspect of that, who are attending the activation, seeing this, spectacle. And I think this is a really smart and interesting way or interesting example of how brands can kind of engage people within their activations and invite them into the world, feeling authentic, and also get some really interesting campaign collateral. It lives great on social, and they can also scale to a larger campaign initiative if needed. So it's kind of these sort of interesting stunts and creative techniques that are interesting now, I think, especially in beauty.
That's amazing. I didn't that the whole Joan Rivers thing is so cool. Like
Yeah.
I met her one time when I was in college in Worcester, Massachusetts. We drove to Boston to see her, to see her show.
Oh,
And we
cool.
were obsessed with her. Like, I loved everything about Joan Rivers. And when the show is over, you know, we all like left the theater. It was a small theater in, like, I think in Framingham, like maybe a half hour, 45 minutes west of Boston. And we went outside and we're like, I mean, again, the theater was so small, we knew like the side entrance or exit, like she was going to come out of that, right? And like we
Mhm.
wanted to see her, like it's Joan fucking
Yeah.
Rivers. And she comes out and all her security is like all there and like they were like blocking us. And I was like, I remember looking up at her and she had this big black fur on and I reached up and I touched her fur and they like kind of swatted my hand away and she's like, leave them alone, these are my fans.
Oh,
And it was like, oh my god,
fantastic.
yes, Joan Rivers. I touched Joan Rivers' black fur coat at like midnight outside of Boston. Like I totally forgot about that moment until you just like sparked it. Um so cool. You know, during our discovery call you broke you talked about how beauty brands can be broken into several distinct groups. Like
Mm.
I think you classified them as founder-led brands, heritage luxury brands, K-beauty brands, science-driven clinical brands. Like that's fascinating to me. You know, like I come from the world, the skincare part of the beauty world. What what are what are these brands actually selling to consumers beyond the product itself? Is it an emotional connection? Is it identity? Like, I'm always fascinated with how consumers interact and why they interact with a brand.
Yeah, so I think this is something really interesting, and it's funny. I don't even think 2 years ago I would have included K beauty in that
Mm,
breakdown, but we're seeing
yeah, that intrigued me. Yeah.
such a surge of it, and I don't know if it's like such a secret anymore, but Sephora is planning a huge rollout. I think Q3 with K beauty brands, which is obviously a huge industry indicator.
Right. Yeah.
So I definitely think it deserves its place now. When we look at these different brands, I do think they are, of course, selling different things, and I think it's interesting to get your perspective too. So chime in whenever about
Definitely.
especially on the formulation side of things. I was actually recently at a clean beauty summit here in New York, and our mutual friend Mark was
Yeah.
there speaking, and
Yeah.
he really got into the science of things, which I know nothing about. And I was shocked. I was like, wow, there really isn't that, like, there are only so many ingredients to really choose from. So it
Hmm.
really comes down to the marketing in terms of how you're selling these, especially in skincare, of course, where maybe there's not as much differentiation as color cosmetics. Um, but for now, let me speak from a little bit of personal experience. So when I first got into the beauty world, when I arrived fresh off the boat from Europe, I ended up here in New York, was pretty quickly hired up by a production company where I was really thrown into the middle of that luxury celebrity world. It was right around the time of the launch of Fenty. So, of course,
Mm,
that product innovation obviously shook the industry, and rightly so. It was much needed, I think. But I
yeah.
think the more interesting and subtle cultural shift is this idea of celebrity-led brands entering the market. I think that was kind of the really first big bombshell. I mean, now there are so many,
Oh
but
my
this is
God,
really
every
interesting.
celebrity has their own beauty brand now. Yeah.
I know.
And
So
I've worked on Fenty, you know that.
mhm,
Sofia Vergara's brand. Like, there's so many.
I know. I think obviously Ree really like led the charge there, but
Yeah,
I
she
think
did.
even outside of the beauty industry, even if you move into founder world of any type of business,
Hmm.
the same mechanics are kind of being used, right? How are you, again, back to this idea of an artist identity or founder identity? How are you using your unique voice and POV to sell your product? So in terms of these, four categories, obviously we have these founder-led brands, especially if a celebrity that have a lot of cultural momentum behind them. Generally speaking, you have these heritage brands, which I think focus a lot on reputation. I'm a big fan of Dior Beauty myself.
Yep.
I do think the formulation is great, but also, it just has that weight in the name, and that's something that's built again over years. So I don't think that
Mm.
can be discounted. K beauty again is kind of a new phenomenon. I think we're kind of understanding, but I have worked with a few brands, and I do notice they love to kind of use this sensorial texture,
Yeah.
love product styling, a lot of like food, sort of cute food styling moments in that type of advertising. And I think there's a lot to be said there about sensorial textures too, and how internet culture shapes that.
Hmm.
I recently did some up close kind of like macros of like, crushing uh, foundations and, swiping skincare swatches. That content really performed extraordinarily well. It doubled the brand's views. And I do think that's, again, due to this kind of ASMR internet culture phenomenon we've been seeing over the past decade or so. So there's that sort of aspect. And then, of course, we have these kind of science based, I would say, clinical brands, which also can dip, I think, into the founder world. There are a lot of derms, clinicians, this sort of thing,
Yeah.
who are doing a great job. One I've recently found really interesting is Dr. Idris. I don't know if you're
Mm.
familiar.
Yeah, I love her.
Really,
She's amazing.
really fantastic branding and marketing. It's
Yeah.
clearly a Durham clinical science brand, but it's not what I would say the majority of clinical science brands are doing with their aesthetics.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, unique POV. And I
Yeah.
think as much as you can get yourself out of one of these buckets and really leverage from another and create something remarkable, and again, a world around your product, I think that's the best kind of strategy now, especially if you're a founder listening.
Yeah. Everybody's trying to break through, right? Like, I have a
Hmm.
whole, like, I want to say a love-hate relationship with luxury skincare, but it's really leans more towards hate than love. And
Hmm.
you made this point earlier in talking about Mark and what Mark Broussard, that is, who's been on the podcast 4 times. Yeah, he's an OG here at Skin Karma. Um, when you mentioned that, he like sparked something in you where you realize there's only so many ingredients. Like, everybody's working with the same ingredients when it comes to the skin. And, my experience with luxury skincare is it's really luxury for luxury's sake. It's almost never a higher quality product. And that's not to say that there aren't higher quality products like Dior, for example. I think
Mm.
I think their skincare is actually elevated. Is it better for your skin than the opposite of that, like the ordinary? It depends on what your skin needs and what you're trying to achieve with a
Mm.
product. Chanel actually has very good skincare. So there are certainly luxury skincare brands out there that do a really good job and actually deliver a higher quality product than, I don't know, something that's cheaper. But
Mhm.
there are luxury brands out there, and there's no holds barred here on Skin Karma. Like, I think Barbara Sturm is an inferior product, particularly what you're paying for. Um, I would say that about La Mer as well. Like, La Mer is like kind of they're the OG of luxury skincare, right? Like, Creme de la Mer hit the market in the early '60s before either of us were born. And look, that brand is there's still something about it. I think you called it weight, the weight behind a brand. Like, that's kind of
Yeah.
what they're resting on.
Well, it's funny. I actually put them down in my notes before hopping on, because
Mm,
I'm really glad you brought them up, because they are, I think they do have that weight.
yeah.
And the question I'd ask you and anyone listening now is, if I pulled up a La Mer ad right now and I
Hmm.
covered the product in that ad, my bet is that you probably would still recognize it as a La Mer ad. And I
Mm,
don't think that can be understated, that much brand identity can be recognized in a product without even having the like product in the shot, right? So I
yeah.
think that's something that valuable that anyone can take away. If you're showing your imagery on your Instagram website, if you're in a retailer and your retailer, and if you can't do that kind of simple test and your imagery isn't distinct enough, isn't, visually unique enough, I think you're doing yourself a great disservice, because at the end of the day, that's branding and that's doing a good amount of selling. I will say the modern consumer is very smart and educated, and they want to know what they're putting on their skin. So I do think, a good product is necessary, but you do kind of have to play with these big contenders and kind of get on their level. And I know let's go into the AI world, just dip our toes there for a second. Obviously, that's a
Yeah.
huge topic of conversation these days. Everyone wants to save time, money, that sort of thing. But two things. One, I'm actually having a lot of clients, and I'm seeing this just in the marketing world, that are receiving a lot of pushback. Their products aren't selling, and people, they want, again, realness, authenticity with their sales. That doesn't mean you have to sacrifice creativity. But the other thing I'll say there is these models, of course, there's the typical question of controversy of, are these models ripping from creatives from where they're pulling their sources?
Mm.
Valid question. But I think the more interesting note is how are you prompting these models? Because you have to tell it to create something. And one thing you can do in prompting models is feed it reference images, which
Right.
that, in my opinion, is definitely plagiarism. But if you're just feeding it reference images from other brands, which, by the way, all brands look at each other and copy
We
anyway.
all, and
Just
benchmarking that's what you do. You do that
Yeah.
across the board in beauty marketing.
I mean, look, if you pull up skincare campaigns within the last year, I guarantee half of them will have the same tagline and generally look the same. It's just what it is. But
Right.
point being, like, when you start plugging that in AI, well, it was already similar. Now it's just going to be a carbon copy. So
Right.
it does save time, it does save money probably, but you're losing brand trust and your content's literally looking the same. I think, again, going back to this idea of luxury marketing, one of the biggest thing you can do for yourself is create a solid brand identity that invites your viewer or customer into a lifestyle that's authentic and non-performative. So I think easier said than done, right? But I think that's
Yeah.
something that you can really start thinking about and can really elevate your business a lot.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Your agency manifesto argues that the algorithm changed where desire lives, not how desire works. What
Mm.
do you believe remains fundamentally unchanged about human desire? Like, given
Mm.
the state of play today with, social media and AI and, the evolution of consumer behavior?
Yeah, well, look, I'll take it back again to this idea of where the media power is concentrated. So, again, in the 90s and 2000s, it was really kind of in these few channels, right?
Mm,
But now we're in a place where it's democratized and so many people have voices. I mean, even this conversation we're having now, right, is kind of a result of that. You have,
yeah.
an audience of people who want to, who are very invested in the skin world, the skincare world. And
Hmm.
I think that's a beautiful thing. So there's a desire to learn more and know about that. So I think, again, we're kind of coming back to this idea of authenticity, realness, but also, being immersed and creative. And when, again, this push goes out of legacy, let's call it legacy publishing, into the world, the touch points of that become the social algorithm. That's what I kind of mean when I say that. So, if, again, let's view a brand as a tree. The roots I kind of would view as the algorithm, right? The first touch points where people are, interacting with your brand. The first, I think, what's the statistic? It takes at least 3 serves of an ad for someone to get really
Yeah.
engaged with it.
Yeah.
That's no longer happening on CTV, probably, right? So social is really where you're interacting with these people. It needs to be authentic, needs to be engaged. And again, I think what I'm seeing specifically in the beauty industry, I just was on set a couple weeks ago with a brand where they're really leaning into that. That's why they hired myself and my agency to bring this kind of holistic world building view to social content that makes it feel lived in, right, and authentic. So I think that's one thing. And then, of course, as we go up and move into more, in-store ads, anything on a billboard, packaging, all that sort of thing, again, really important stuff. But it becomes, as a result of all this work you're building, on the social algorithm. So that's kind of what I mean when I say that's where desire is built. No one is becoming invested in your brand because of a glossy ad you spent, $500,000 on. I think
Right.
it's great if you have the capital to do that, but especially if you're, a smaller brand or something of that sort, I think the smarter idea is how to capitalize on that desire that's being built on social, and then think of how that system can translate into those higher moments. Again, especially if you're working on a budget, how can you shoot or create content that feels authentic on social, but can also maybe double as something that feels a little bit more polished for, these bigger surfaces.
Right.
So it feels, an authentic growth as opposed to this like really disjointed thing, which I think if you look at a lot of modern brands, there's just no connection between their digital footprint and where they're living elsewhere. And I think that's a big disservice.
That makes me crazy as someone who works in branding, in my day job. Like
Mm.
the disconnect, and I'm a copywriter, and
Mm.
my job is the verbal expression of a brand and the brand voice. And I cracked up when you said that everybody's tagline was the same. And I mean,
I
that's
mean,
because they're not using a copywriter,
yeah.
like who's going to think originally. They're using, I don't know who they're using. They're using someone in-house or an intern, or come up with some taglines. And where's the intern going to get they don't have the creativity behind that, right? On ChatGPT or somewhere else on the internet. Like, they're not thinking originally. Like, my mind is set up to do that. Um,
I mean, look, oh,
yeah.
sorry, go for
No, no,
it. No, I
no.
was
Go
just saying,
ahead.
I think these tools are really useful, like especially for me who's not a writer. I mean, I use GPT a good amount in my marketing things, but I go through probably 20 rounds with this thing, deleting things, saying no, this is not good. And it's still like a really deeply creative process for me. I think the
Yeah,
issue
I
is people
agree.
are using these tools as a crutch and just like saying here and then passing it along with no real tool, and it's creating a good amount of homogeny, I think.
Yeah, completely. I mean, you have to use it. You have to use it the right way. It's a tool,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
It's actually made me a much better copywriter. And I was already a damn good copywriter.
Yeah.
It's created a sounding board for me. Like, I didn't have that. Like, I work alone, like you probably do most of the time as well. Like, it's not the easiest thing to be a creative working alone,
No.
but at the same time, that's kind of where you thrive. So it's a fascinating dynamic, or counter dynamic, since you're alone. Um, and I've never worked on in a writer's circle. I'd
Mm.
love, like, I'm in LA now. Like, if anybody's listening,
Yeah.
I would love to work in a writer's room with 2, 3 other writers, and we're all working on the same thing. Like, that's kind of cool to me. That's uncharted territory for me.
I think you should give it a go. I mean, even I like to have like work from home dates with
Yeah.
some of my creative friends every once in a while, even if they're not like in the same, you know, like profession. I think it's
Hmm.
good to like just yell out across the room to see if they have something, valuable to add to the table. There's also, I think, a lot of good, I'm part of like a Slack group, for example,
Mm.
with, other founders and self-starters in the industry. And I think that's really nice too, just get a fresh perspective. It's so, valuable.
That's
And I think,
awesome. I love that
yeah.
idea. Yeah, that's super cool. We're talking about brands, and getting themselves out there in the right way, being heard, and the repetition that a consumer needs in order
Mm.
to connect with a brand, or to receive a seed that the brand is planting in their head. And they need that constant repetition. But what, like, I'm curious what you think about a brand that scales too aggressively, and how you go about preserving taste and mystery, particularly vis-a-vis luxury, like, right? Like, that's
Mm.
that's kind of the whole crux of luxury. Like, in an environment, if you think about an environment that's constantly demanding more, like,
Mm.
how do you balance that?
I just think, well, let's look at something in fashion. The fashion world, I think, does a really good job. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if you're familiar with Jacquemus,
Mm-hmm.
I think their branding and marketing is phenomenal. It's creative, very smart, very social first at the same way too, but none of it feels performed or like they're trying too hard. It feels very natural, right? And I think this is kind of the key. Every type of content that I would say a luxury brand is putting out, and let's not like get too carried away. I feel like some luxury brands have really kind of fallen off, right, in the modern world. But in theory, I think luxury sort of has this persona of an identity, right? So I think as long as all of your content is kind of going back to this mythos that you're building, I
Mm-hmm.
think you're in a pretty good spot. And of course, there is this idea of what performs well with your audience, and I think that's especially as you're growing something you just kind of need to identify. And also, again, I just want to say it like these are all things we can learn from the luxury world. It's not to say that your product needs to function exactly the same. Like maybe you're a founder and a derm, and you do a lot of sort of like talking head style videos talking about skincare, ingredients, and that performs really well, and you've built an audience around that. I think that's great, and you should probably consider, keep doing that. Obviously, it's driving revenue for you. But then the idea is thinking, okay, like how can I take that and how can I build a visual world around it so that I'm not always relying on myself to be doing these videos. How else can I get creative with the marketing to create content that you know shows off my product, shows off the texture, shows what it does on the skin. I just think everything needs to feed back into a visual world. That's not to say every brand ever has to you know, be mysterious or whatever. I think, in many ways, K beauty, we kind of touched on before, is kind of the antithesis of that.
Yeah.
It's very fun. It's a lot of textures. It's a lot of, again, I think they like really lean into like the uh, food trend, both with their like product naming, also just like with the styling. A lot of times you'll have like a little, serum next to like a donut or whatever, just like a good example. That's not mysterious at all. That's quite the opposite. But they still are doing the same thing, which is building this visual identity. So I think that's the more important takeaway, in my opinion.
Yeah. Last question. Your writing references Oscar Wilde, Krishnamurti, luxury fashion, celebrity culture, and of course algorithms. But beneath all of it seems to be a lifelong fascination with beauty itself.
Mm.
After everything you've seen, everywhere you've been, everything you've built, and everything you will build, what do you think beauty actually is?
Mm. Well, I'm going to answer this more as an artist than I would of a marketer, which I feel like I've had my like marketing hat on for most of this conversation. But bringing
Mm-hmm.
it back to the art side of things, I've worked with all sorts of artists. I'm an artist myself, and I think when you're creating something, there's kind of two camps I see people do it from. There's one where uh, you operate from the idea of, you know, something happened to me. It made me really happy. It made me really sad. So I use that energy, I kind of transmute it and turn it into this artwork. Usually, I would say that kind of leans more towards the negative side of emotions because, life happens. We're not all born into the best situations, and, life happens. Um, and I've known a lot of great artists who once they sort of work through that and you know try to be okay there, the artwork sort of starts to suffer, and that really gets you thinking like, is beauty these beautiful artworks that people create, is it only um, a product of pain or suffering, and the ability to translate that into something beautiful? And then you kind of look around at the world and you think, well, like, no, that like sun coming through the trees is really beautiful, that
Mm.
texture and the leaf is really beautiful. So you say, well, no, there's the world provides it to us for free, and I don't well, I'm not a tree, I don't know, but I don't think it's suffering too much. They're under the sun. So then you start thinking about things like that, which you reference. Like I love reading and old philosophy, so you reference that. If anyone's interested, go look into those people. But so then you have to wonder, okay, I want to be in a good place as an artist. I don't want to, be suffering, but I still want to make beautiful things. So where do I tap in? Where do I get that from? Where do I get that beauty from? Um, so my point being is there's something I think underlying around us all that's extremely beautiful and intelligent. And the real goal, at least what I've been working on in my own life, is kind of tapping into that and taking the beauty from there and being more present with what's around. And I mean, to be honest with you, my best ideas, I I hesitate to claim them. They feel kind of like, like little whispers from God or something
Mm,
that you kind of try to write down before they kind of scurry away back to wherever they came from.
yeah. Yeah. It reminds me when you're talking about a tree. I'm not a tree either. And I'm also not a cat, but I have a
Hmm.
cat. Do you have a
Hmm.
cat?
My housemate does, yeah.
I feel like you're a cat person. I don't know why. Um, and I don't remember, like, I've had cats for the better part of the last 30 years.
Mm.
And I and it never occurred to me, even though, like, I know the personality of a cat, and each of my cats had distinct personalities, but in general, they're all cats, right?
Mhm.
And I was reading something about the psychology of cats like 3 years ago. And they mentioned in the article mentioned that really the the cat is wired to always find the most comfort and joy and in every moment.
Oh,
Isn't that beautiful? And
yeah.
I was like, "Oh my god, that is absolutely true." Like, that is all a cat wants all day. It is that moment of pure joy, whether it's eating in the moment or sleeping or loving you or just being. Museus, like, he's getting used to LA now, and he, like, sits in that window. And when I lived in New York, I was on the 19th floor. Like,
Mm.
I don't know what he could see. I know he couldn't see down to the street. He could see light and whatever and motion, and that was interesting to him. But here we overlook a courtyard, and there's a balcony, and people come out of their apartments at the same level, and he sits there all morning and he watches these people going by. He people watches. And he
Mm.
loves that. And he loves, of course, that it's sunny here all the time. And it just reminds me that he's finding that is so magical to him, and as simple as it sounds, like that's his favorite moment, it seems, of the day. Just sitting there in the sun watching people going by. Like, that's so pure, right? Like,
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
I think our biggest problem as like a human being that we have collectively is that our
Mm,
consciousness is like just far enough along to think in on itself too much and cause
yeah.
problems, like the beautiful evolutions our mind has.
Yeah.
But we tend to kind of use those against ourselves, I
We
think. And it's like,
self-sabotage.
oh, absolutely. Like
Yeah.
if we just were like maybe like this far back, maybe we'd have the same joyful days as a cat.
Yeah, totally. All right, let's move into the lightning round, the fun part.
Okay.
The first question, something you believed about beauty 10 years ago that you no longer believe.
Mm, 10 years ago, I was like just getting into the beauty world,
Mm,
and I was a guy from the Midwest,
right?
and I hadn't really touched like even a moisturizer. So I've definitely learned a lot over the years with beauty. And honestly, what's one thing I know now? Like just like take care of your skin,
Mm,
a little caffeine under the eyes does wonders. And
mm.
also collagen. I'm a big, like ingesting collagen has done wonders for my skin.
Ah, okay. Okay. That's interesting, but we're simpatico in the same way. When I first started in beauty, I don't even think I was washing my face.
No.
I was using Stridex
Mhm.
pads. Like, I didn't have a cleanser. And you'll love you'll love hearing that the first cleanser I ever really loved in beauty was a Dior cleanser and
Oh,
a Dior toner. If I smelled that Dior toner right now, like I had my eyes closed, I would know that that's what that was.
yeah.
Like,
My
yeah.
my my makeup artist friend recommended me, and I've been hooked ever since to the Dior products.
Mm, it's good stuff. It's good
Yeah.
stuff. And I was hourly. I was making like $8 an hour. Like a Dior toner then was still probably like $25, $30. Today it's
We
probably 50. But
yeah, of
that's
course.
like a big deal for me to be paying for a Dior toner.
It proves this industry is recession proof. So
Yeah, for sure. For
go
sure.
us, go beauty.
Totally. What's something you're embarrassingly bad at?
Cooking.
Oh,
I live
really?
I lived with Italians, and I can make an okay like pasta, but
Mm.
anything that requires more than one pan to clean afterwards, I'm so uninterested. I wish I was better. I would save a lot of money, but
Well, there's a lot of amazing things you can cook with one pan.
oh, I know, I know, I know.
Yeah.
The, I get so invested with my work, and then I'm like, oh, it's 8. I don't really want to cook something
It
right
is
now.
amazing. I don't know. Are there any Italians, men, women, who don't know how to cook? Like
I think it's
Italians love to
impossible.
cook. It's like, yeah, right?
I had the best pasta of my life, which these two like guys cooked for me. Like even from restaurants, like it was better. I can't
Yeah.
even. Oh,
Yeah.
it's
I
like a gene.
love an amatriciana. Oh my
Ooh,
God. And anything spicy, Italian,
you like
like,
a good nude, yeah?
oh my God, are you kidding?
Oh,
Absolutely. Like, makes my head sweat. If it makes my
the
head
best way.
sweat, yeah, in the best way. Uh, what's a creative habit or ritual you swear by?
I do love my morning walks. It sounds so silly,
Mm,
but if I feel like if I don't get out and see something, then my mind it will draw circles inside of itself. I feel like walking allows it to have like little new pathways to go out. I mean, it doesn't have to be walking. It could be honestly any, sort of physical something, just seeing something new, like a cat, I guess.
yeah, and out in the light. My guess would be
Yes.
that you wouldn't be as gratified doing that in the dark.
Uh, I don't know. I go through phases where sometimes I'll like be up really early and, up
Mm,
and at 'em, and
mm-hmm.
then other times where I'll find a lot of fascination in the night. I still haven't deciphered where these cycles, if they correspond to anything or if they're just
Right.
something the body does. Because I don't unless I have to be on set at like 6 a.m. or
Mm-hmm.
some ungodly time, I don't set an alarm. I really like to let the world wake me up if possible. So
Me too. I don't wait. I don't
I
use
don't
an
know.
alarm. Yeah.
Horrible. It's horrible. Like a
Yeah. I don't
loud noise
understand.
to
Like,
wake you up.
oh, the worst. Absolute worst.
Like no.
But when you live with a cat, you kind of have no choice. You get
Uh,
up, like, yeah, I hear him like doing all kinds of nonsense at 4:45, 5 o'clock in the morning, and he knows that I'm getting up anyway, so
yeah.
he's kind of rustling. But
At least it's rustling and not like a beep.
yeah, absolutely, and I love that.
Yeah.
Like it makes me sad when I'm traveling and I don't have him here with me or there with
Oh.
me. What's the most beautiful city in the world to you?
Mm, that's a difficult one.
You have to pick one.
Um, beautiful, beautiful. Lightning round. I should be quicker. I don't know. Look, I've over the years I've fallen in love with Milan.
Okay.
Beautiful, beautiful. I don't know, but I think there's something beautiful in the simplicity about it.
Mm,
Kind of like the chicness of the people. In a way, it's quite an industrial city, especially compared to the rest of Italy. I think there are far more postcard beautiful places out there
yeah.
in the world.
Yeah.
Um, but there's something about the creativity there I really enjoyed, and maybe it's honestly just nostalgia. That's something to not be understated. But to be honest, I don't think I've traveled enough places to really say my favorite. I spent my first time in Southeast Asia earlier this year, and
Mm,
that blew my mind away. I need to go back and spend more time there, but that was beautiful in a way I had never experienced before. So maybe the answer lies somewhere over there. I've also really been wanting to do Morocco. I think that would
Oh yeah.
somewhere special. I know obviously like Yves Saint Laurent was obviously quite entranced there with the foundation and everything, but I don't know. I need to see more.
I've been to Southeast Asia a few times, and I have never been to Thailand. I need to get to
Ooh,
Thailand. I've been to
same.
Saigon. I've been to Hong Kong. I mean, and I obviously, Tokyo is not Southeast Asia, but
Mm.
I love Tokyo. I really
I've
love
been meaning to go so
Tokyo.
bad.
Oh my God, there's something about Tokyo. I've been 4 times. Like,
Wow. And you're even
it's
closer now, I
I'm
think.
even closer now. Now I have no excuse not to. And I actually, the last 3 years I was in New York, I was studying Japanese.
Oh, wow.
So
Congrats.
I
That's really
could not read a single thing in Japanese the last time I was in Tokyo, let alone speak anything. Um, so yeah, I got to get back there. What's the most overused word in beauty marketing right now?
cool. Glow.
I love that. That's so true.
It's
Oh my
everywhere.
God. Oh my God. I was actually working on some branding for a K beauty brand an hour before I got on here with you.
Mm.
And I was playing around with the word glow. And the funny thing about when you work on a Korean skincare brand, like I've worked on Dr. Jart, I've worked on Laneige, I worked on a couple of more Pacific brands. Like they have this really interesting connection to English that
Hmm.
is so hard to translate or to connect with as a like native English speaker and an experienced like writer in
Mm.
English. I can't even describe how challenging it is to work on a brand like that. Like, Dr. Jart has this product called ceramidin,
Mm-hmm.
which is really just the word ceramide and the word in. Like,
Okay.
for real. Like, my mind doesn't work like that, you know? And I was actually using ChatGPT yesterday. I was like, help me to think simplistically.
Mm.
Because that's really what it's about. They're using really simple English words, and I don't know if it's that they whoever was thinking that up had limited ability in English, or they just love these simpler words. I don't know, but I found ChatGPT pretty helpful, and it really loved the word glow. I was like, okay, I mean that's an option. That's an option,
Maybe
but
maybe Korean will be your next language to add to the list. It
I
might
would
be
love
useful.
to learn Korean. I would love
Mm.
to, and I love watching Korean TV, like Korean reality shows. And I'll like sit there and literally pause it and pull up ChatGPT and ask it to tell me how the Korean alphabet is structured and why. It's like,
No.
seriously, I've done it a few times. So remind me how Korean is structured. Remind me why this word is this.
Mm.
That stuff fascinates me. Last thing you binge watched.
I go through if so I don't I try not to edit my own photos much anymore because it's such like a time thing, but
Mm,
um if I am, I'll always like put something on in the background just to like,
yeah.
it's usually like some form of trash TV from the 2000s. I think the recent one I had in the background was like Hell's Kitchen or something.
Oh my God. That's hilarious. And
Just
that
like an angry
you've
British
seen
man
it all
yelling in the
before.
background while I'm getting rid of
Yeah.
acne or something.
Right. Well, you're getting rid of acne. That's hilarious. Oh my God. Last question, and then we'll wrap up. One thing beauty brands consistently get wrong about consumers.
Mm. Well, I think this honestly goes back to what we were discussing. It's just like this like homogeny type thing. I feel like there are so many campaigns out there where it's just like girl holds like, product in various places around the face on studio
Mm.
background.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I don't think that's the way forward. I think it's useful in some circumstances, but I think a lot of beauty marketers are coming around to this. I've been on a few sets in the past couple months where they're on the mood boards. There are literally X's over types of photos like that because I think they're catching on that this isn't like performing. People don't want to see this. And just to add on that, I think I recently saw a study out on Beauty Independent or one of these sources that uh, the industry's finally breaking away from Gen Z focused only marketing, and the brands
Mm.
that are actually performing are focusing on a wide range of consumers from Gen Z, of course, but all the way up to Gen X and even older. So I think that's a powerful insight as well that people are finally waking up to, is that it's for everyone, and that definitely does impact the kind of campaigns I think we're going to see.
Yeah. I'm glad
Does
you
like
mentioned.
oh, I was just going to, does like a woman in her 70s need to see a girl holding a product next to her face smiling? I don't know if that's going to relate.
I don't
And
think it
then,
does. I don't think she
yeah,
does relate, right? Like
yeah.
there's I've had a few brand founders on um who are really trying to target the Gen X consumer because
Mm,
I'm as someone who's Gen X, it's so interesting like how brands are just kind of overshooting Gen X and even millennials in many cases to target Gen Z, which
mm,
is great, but what about, you know, the millions of consumers that you're alienating or just ignoring, you
yeah.
know? Like it's that whole dynamic is so fascinating to me. It really is. And there's something about, and I've read several articles about this that, you'll like read an article about marketing, whether it's beauty or not, and they'll talk about they'll talk about Gen Z and they'll talk about millennials and then they'll even talk about boomers and never even use the phrase Gen X.
Mm.
And it's like, what is that? I don't understand that. It's really fascinating, but that's a whole other conversation for a whole other episode. Um Anderson, this is amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great convo, I think. I hope it
Yeah,
brings a lot of value to the people listening.
super fun and we went way long. So
Oh,
apologies if I'm keeping you from anything. I need to go eat lunch.
yeah,
Um
please.
but I appreciate you. I really do. And I'm gonna drop links for listeners to connect with you into the show notes. And I'll see you when you get back to LA.
Hopefully very soon.
Yay.
I need some Cali sun.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.
See ya.
Catch you, Anderson. Bye.
Bye.
Ciao. All right. Thank you for listening to the Skin Karma Pod. Find more insights, real talk, and reviews of my favorite skincare products on the Skin Karma blog at skinkarma.com. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please rate and review this episode. It helps me to reach more listeners. Ciao.